Okay, we are live. At least the StreamYard says we are. Okay, we are live. All right. At least the StreamYard says we are. All right. What's going on, folks? This is Art. We are live. And sorry this was a little bit late. I had a friend I needed help out with his car Tuesday. So, but better late than never, right? So, we are going to go through Chapter 9 of the Kerner Commission, comparing the immigrant and Negro experience. Anything you want to say on this chapter before we start, BGS?
It was something that's interesting because I think Dr. Dunbar did a video either yesterday, I think it was yesterday, talking about why black businesses, did integration kill black businesses. And if you look through this section of the Kerner Commission, what they're saying is really was damaging to black business was not integration. What was damaging to black businesses is the migration from the rural areas into the urban areas.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's going to go through that how the by the time the Negro migration came into the urban areas, white merchants and white people already had a foothold, and there was no place for black businesses to actually grow. So they left the businesses where they were in the rural areas or in the outside the urban areas, which were thriving, and they moved to the urban areas because the rural areas had no jobs. So I
Yeah.
think when people said it was integration that caused it, I think that's too simplified. Did it have an effect on it? Sure, but the thing is, it wasn't. According to the Kerner Commission, that wasn't the main cause.
They left their businesses.
Well, yeah, the people moved, so it
Yeah.
wasn't like they left their businesses. The people moved, and then there was no place
Place for them. Yeah.
to establish themselves again. So it was never the same.
Yeah. They didn't have an economic base
No,
because
yeah, because the economic base moved, and then when they moved into urban areas, they were moving into places where people are already entrenched, and there was they gave a host of reasons why um, black people couldn't establish the same kind of businesses that the white people did, along with political power and all kinds of other stuff. But yeah.
yeah, that's why I figured you could do this one because it was interesting.
Hmm.
So let's go ahead and start.
All right.
Section 32 of the Kerner Commission Report. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Report of the National Advisory Commission on Civil Disorders. Kerner Commission Report. Chapter 9. Comparing the Immigrant and Negro Experience. In the preceding chapters, we have surveyed the historical background of racial discrimination and traced its effects on Negro employment, on the social structure of the ghetto community, and on the conditions of life that surrounds the urban Negro poor. Here we address a fundamental question that many white Americans are asking today. Why has the Negro been unable to escape from poverty and the ghetto like the European immigrants? The maturing economy. The changing nature of the American economy is one major reason. When the European immigrants were arriving in large numbers, America was becoming an urban industrial society. To build its major cities and industries, America needed great pools of unskilled labor. The immigrants provided the labor, gained an economic foothold, and thereby enabled their children and grandchildren to move up to skilled, white-collar, and professional employment.
Mm-hmm.
Since World War II especially, America's urban industrial society has matured. Unskilled labor is far less essential than before, and blue-collar jobs of all kinds are decreasing in number and importance as a source of new employment. The Negro who migrated to the great urban centers lacked the skills essential to the new economy, and the schools of the ghetto have been unable to provide the education that can qualify them for decent jobs. The Negro migrant, unlike the immigrant, found little opportunity in the city. He had arrived too late, and the unskilled labor he had to offer was no longer needed.
Yeah, that goes
The
into what you were saying.
disability of race.
Hmm. Hmm.
Racial discrimination is undoubtedly the second major reason why the Negro has been unable to escape from poverty. The structure of discrimination has persistently narrowed his opportunities and restricted his prospects. Well before the high tide of immigration from overseas, Negroes were already relegated to the poorly paid, low-status occupations. Had it not been for racial discrimination, the North might well have recruited Southern Negroes after the Civil War to provide the labor for building the burgeoning urban industrial economy. Instead, Northern employers looked to Europe for their sources of unskilled labor. Upon the arrival of the immigrants, the Negroes were dislodged from the few urban occupations they had dominated. Not until World War II were Negroes generally hired for industrial jobs, and by that time the decline in the need for unskilled labor had already begun. European immigrants, too, suffered from discrimination, but never was it so pervasive. The prejudice against color in America has formed a bar to advancement unlike any other. Entry into the political system. Political opportunities also played an important role in enabling the European immigrants to escape from poverty. The immigrants settled for the most part in rapidly growing cities that had powerful and expanding political machines, which gave them economic advantages in exchange for political support. The political machines were decentralized, and ward-level grievance machinery, as well as personal representation, enabled the immigrant to make his voice heard and his power felt. Since the local political organizations exercised considerable influence over public building in the cities, they provided employment in construction jobs for the immigrant voters. Ethnic groups often dominated one or more of the municipal services: police and fire protection, sanitation, and even public education. By the time the Negroes arrived,
That's also well, you had like
Mhm.
certain groups like
Mhm.
the Irish being into the police force, stuff like that, or it's Italians doing firefighter work. You know, because most groups, I think, even Charles said it, like a lot of your
Yeah, the Irish became police.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that goes into that where groups were overabundance in certain jobs.
Mm. Mhm.
the situation had altered dramatically. The great wave of public building had virtually come to an end. Reform groups were beginning to attack the political machines. The machines were no longer so powerful or so well equipped to provide jobs and other favors. Although the political machines retained their hold over the areas settled by Negroes, the scarcity of patronage jobs made them unwilling to share with Negroes the political positions they had created in these neighborhoods. For example, Harlem was dominated by white politicians for many years after it had become a Negro ghetto. Even today, New York's Lower East Side, which is now predominantly Puerto Rican, is strongly influenced by politicians of the older immigrant groups.
Mm.
This pattern exists in many other American cities. Negroes are still underrepresented in city councils and in most city agencies. Segregation played a role here too. The immigrants and their descendants who felt threatened by the arrival of the Negro prevented a Negro immigrant coalition that might have saved the old political machines. Reform groups, nominally more liberal on the race issue, were often dominated by businessmen and middle-class city residents, who usually opposed coalition with any lower-income groups, white or black. Cultural
They
factors.
go to them liberals.
Cultural
Mhm.
factors also made it easier for the immigrants to escape from poverty. They came to America from much poorer societies, with a low standard of living, and they came at a time when job aspirations were low. When most jobs in the American economy were unskilled, they sensed little deprivation in being forced to take the dirty and poorly paid jobs. Moreover, their families were large, and many breadwinners, some of whom never married, contributed to the total family income. As a result, family units managed to live even from the lowest paid jobs and still put some money aside for savings or investment. For example, to purchase a house or tenement, or to open a store or factory. Since the immigrants spoke little English and had their own ethnic culture, they needed stores to supply them with ethnic foods and other services. Since their family structures were patriarchal, men found satisfactions in family life that helped compensate for the bad jobs that they had to take and the hard work they had to endure. Negroes came to the city under quite different circumstances. Generally relegated to jobs that others would not take, they were paid too little to be able to put money in savings for new enterprises. In addition, Negroes lacked the extended family characteristic of certain European groups. Each household usually had only one or two breadwinners.
Mm-hmm.
Moreover, Negro men had fewer cultural incentives to work in a dirty job for the sake of the family. As a result of slavery and of long periods of male unemployment afterwards, the Negro family structure had become matriarchal. The
Hmm.
man played a secondary and marginal role in his family. For many Negro men, then, there were few of the cultural and psychological rewards of family life. They often abandoned their homes because they felt themselves useless to their families. Although Negro men worked as hard as the immigrants to support their families, their rewards were less. The jobs did not pay enough to enable them to support their families, for prices and living standards had risen since the immigrants had come, and the entrepreneurial opportunities that had allowed some immigrants to become independent, even rich, had vanished. Above all, Negroes suffered from segregation, which denied them access to the good jobs and the right unions, and which deprived them of the opportunity to buy real estate or
Mm-hmm.
obtain business loans, or move out of the ghetto and bring up their children in middle class neighborhoods. Immigrants were able to leave their ghettos as soon as they had the money.
Yep.
Segregation has denied Negroes
Mm-hmm.
the opportunity to live elsewhere.
Yeah, they're put in the box. Yeah.
Yeah. Because you know it, they were pushed out. They didn't want them to get into those certain organizations or jobs, so they had to
Mm-hmm.
take the lower skill jobs
Mm-hmm.
that paid poor.
Paid poor or whatever the jobs were left over.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, no wonder our culture has become matriarchal because that's been going on ever since we got here or became
Yeah,
free.
yeah. Well, yeah. Even before we became free.
Yeah,
Yeah. They
because
just talked about what just went on, within the last 100 years.
hmm
But yeah, it was actually established as a matriarchal um, culture in the first place, going back from 1750, if I'm not mistaken.
let's go to this next one.
The vital element of time. Finally, nostalgia makes it easy to exaggerate the ease of escape of the white immigrants from the ghettos. When the immigrants were immersed in poverty, they too lived in slums, and those neighborhoods exhibited fearfully high rates of alcoholism, desertion, illegitimacy, and other pathologies associated with poverty. Just as some Negro men desert their families when they are unemployed and their wives can get jobs, so did the men of other ethnic groups, even though time and affluence has clouded white memories of the past.
So it's just not a black problem. It's a problem with being poor.
It would be in poor. You look at other countries. Look what happened when the Soviet Union collapsed and became Russia, and all the money left, and they got crowded into their ghettos without work. They had some of the worst crime on the planet. Look at Mexico.
Hmm.
Southern Mexico with their problems, especially with the drugs and the cartels and them shooting at each other and disappearing people and all that kind of stuff. So it goes on all over the place where there's poor people.
Yeah, and remember that time when Obsidian was trying to say it was a black problem, and we had to go to the Oxford Dictionary to prove it.
Hmm. Hmm.
I mean, it's the same exact same thing. It has something to do with you having poor people that's living in poverty.
Hmm.
This is just what humans do.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's been that way. As long as humans have been around, especially in urban centers. Not so much in rural centers, but urban centers is, when people, a lot of poor people in proximity to each other. This will always happen. Hobbes was saying the same thing.
Mm.
'Cause I was just re-listening to Green Gorilla's lecture on Hobbes and philosophy, and Hobbes was saying the same thing. Without If you put people without proper proper guidance or proper control, it'll descend into the crime and people trying to take stuff from each other. So
Mhm.
that's what happens in the urban center when there's too many people and not enough opportunity and not enough control.
Yep. All right, let's go to the next one.
Today, whites tend to contrast their experience with poverty stricken Negroes. The fact is, among the Southern and Eastern Europeans who came to America in the last great wave of immigration, those who came already urbanized were the first to escape from poverty.
Hmm.
The others who came to America from rural backgrounds, as Negroes did, are now only, after 3 generations, in the
Hmm.
final stages of escaping from poverty.
Hmm.
Until the last 10 years or so, most of these were employed in blue collar jobs, and only a small portion of their children were able or willing to attend college. In other words, only the third, and in many cases only the fourth, generation has been able to achieve the kind of middle class income and status that allows it to send its children to college.
Yep.
Because of
Yep.
favorable economic and political conditions, these ethnic groups were able to escape from lower class status to working class and lower middle class status, but it has taken them 3 generations.
Mm-hmm. Takes
Negroes
time.
have been
Yeah, it
concentrated
does.
in the city for only 2 generations,
Mm-hmm.
and they have been there under much less favorable conditions. Moreover, their escape from poverty has been blocked in part by the resistance of the European ethnic groups. They have been unable to enter some unions and to move in some neighborhoods outside the ghetto because descendants of the European immigrants who control these unions and neighborhoods have not yet abandoned them for middle class occupations and areas. Even so,
Did you want to say something about that?
No, the thing is that what they're talking about as far as time, because we kind of compare ourselves to white people, right?
Hmm.
But we compare ourselves to white people without knowing the process that they went through. Like back it's in the '60s, like I said, a lot of people, a lot of black folks had only been there one generation, even 2 generations. Okay, and coming from a rural area, which most black folks came from, it took 4 generations. So even now, we're just now, if you count the boomers as one, X is 2, millennials 3, Z's is 4. The Z's are just now beginning to catch up to where white folks are.
Yeah, I could see that.
Hmm.
Because I noticed when, like I said, I look at old pictures of
Hmm.
people that share them on Facebook from that I went to school with,
Hmm.
and see how they live versus how they live now, and how their
Hmm.
children are going to live in the future.
Yeah.
They leveled up, and
Yeah.
they leveled up far better than what their parents had. So compared to what I've seen, because some of the some of the older Gen X to early boomers,
Hmm.
especially in my town, they had like the wooden floors. You could feel the air coming up through them,
Hmm.
stuff like that. We ain't doing that no more. So,
Hmm.
we don't have an outhouse anymore. That outhouse is in the 80s. So,
Oh, in the '80s. Oh my
yeah.
goodness.
Yeah,
Okay.
my grandfather still had an outhouse. And it's at the old house. But yeah, we're back.
Yeah, yeah. Well, my uncle's farm. Yeah, I experienced an outhouse. It's not one of those things I would like to do on a daily basis. Let's put it that way.
Nah, not even.
Yeah, but the thing is, that's the thing. My mother experienced living without running water. Okay, when she was growing up. So, and running water was magic to her. Okay, so we're not that far away. People think that we're supposed to catch up to modern times or catch up to where white folks are like overnight because they passed a couple of laws. It's not true. And people have to really understand the process. That's why reading stuff like this actually grounds you into what really happened, because there's a lot of people saying a lot of things by the way they feel, like black folks were in this kick-ass position and we gave up a better position for a worse position. It's not true.
No, no, we were struggling. Like,
Yeah, we're going through a process just like everybody went through a process.
yeah, yeah. Because I remember, I think I shared it with you where you had like some boomers were sleeping on haystacks as beds.
Yeah, it depends on where you were. Yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah, yeah. What age you grew up and where you were. That's
yeah,
very true. Like I said, my cousins, since they were in the rural areas, they had an outhouse. Okay, uh, everybody knows what the number 10 tub is. Okay, the number 10 pail
yeah.
that doubled as a bathtub. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Yep.
You had heat your water.
Yep. Yep.
Hmm.
Yeah, I've heard stories of that. That it's
Hmm.
like a big metal tub
It's a
or
big metal tub.
a
Big metal
pail or
tub.
whatever.
Yeah, it's a big metal tub. Yeah.
Yep. All right.
Negroes have escaped poverty, and they have done so in only 2 generations. Their
Hmm.
success is less visible than that of the immigrants in many cases, for residential segregation has forced them to remain in the ghetto. Still, the proportion of non-whites employed in white-collar, technical, and professional jobs has risen from 10.2% in 1950 to 20.8% in 1966. and the proportion attending college has risen an equal amount. Indeed, the development of a small but steadily increasing Negro middle class, while a great part of the Negro population is stagnating economically, is creating a growing gap between Negro haves and have-nots.
Pookies and Ray Rays
The
versus
only
educated lambs.
Yep.
desperation and anger, which breeds civil disorders. Low-income Negroes realize that segregation and lack of job
Ray, have we seen
opportunity
this
have
before?
made it possible for only a small proportion of all Negroes to escape poverty. And the summer disorders were at least in part a protest against being left behind and left out.
Yep.
The immigrants who labored long hours at hard and often menial work had the hope of a better future, if not for himself, then for his children. This was the promise of the American dream. The society offered to all a future that was open-ended. With hard work and perseverance, a man and his family could in time achieve not only material well-being, but position and status. For the Negro family in the urban ghetto, there is a different vision. The future seems to lead only to a dead end. What the American economy in the late 19th and early 20th century was able to do to help the European immigrants escape from poverty is now largely impossible. New methods of escape must be found for the majority of today's poor. End of section 32.
Yeah. Yeah.
Of the Kerner Commission.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's that. Like, a lot of that explains exactly in an overview what happened and a transition, and you know it's good to have stuff like this around because it kind of eliminates the mythology that we've built up around civil rights and transition. Like civil rights was something that nobody asked for, and we got fooled into integration and all that kind of stuff. Integration, you know, even at that time during the '60s, integration hadn't really happened.
Yeah.
It hadn't really happened because they're talking about black folks being stuck in urban areas in their own segregated communities. And I think Hezekiah News actually played even into the '80s where in Boston where they were actually throwing rocks at kids going, you know, being bused to white schools. So integration was an ongoing process. It didn't just, you know, all of a sudden in the '50s and '60s they stuck black folks around white folks and we integrated. It's still going on. It hasn't stopped.
Yeah. Even I think I shared with you from one of his videos because he has a great. If you guys have not subbed to his channel, y'all need to sub to it. He puts out great content. Hezekiah News Network.
Mm-hmm.
But remember, I think I shared it with you where I saw the bus protests all the way up until like '85. Like they were still protesting black kids going to school with white kids up until 1985.
Yep. Yep. It wasn't something that happened overnight. People think it happened overnight. People think that all of a sudden black folks just gave up their Mayberry existence to move into what black ghettos and try to mix with white people. That wasn't the case.
Not at all. Let's go to the next part.
This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Eric Evans, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Report of the National Advisory Commission on Civil Disorders, Kerner Commission Report. Chapter 10, The Community Response, Part 1. Introduction. The racial disorders of last summer in part reflect the failure of all levels of government, federal and state as well as local, to come to grips with the problems of our cities. The ghetto symbolizes the dilemma, a widening gap between human needs and public resources, and a growing cynicism regarding the commitment of community institutions and leadership to meet these needs. The problem has many dimensions: financial, political, and institutional. Almost all cities, and particularly the central cities of the largest metropolitan regions, are simply unable to meet the growing need for public services and facilities with traditional sources of municipal revenue. Many cities are structured politically so that great numbers of citizens, particularly minority groups, have little or no representation in the processes of government. Finally, some cities lack either the will or the capacity to use effectively the resources that are available to them. Instrumentalities of federal and state government often compound the problems. National policy expressed through a very large number of grant programs and institutions rarely exhibits a coherent and consistent perspective when viewed at the local level. State efforts, traditionally focused on rural areas, often fail to tie in effectively with either local or federal programs in urban areas. Meanwhile, the decay of the central city continues. its revenue base eroded by the retreat of industry and white middle-class families to the suburbs, its budget and tax rate inflated by rising costs and increasing numbers of dependent citizens, and its public plant, schools, hospitals, and correctional institutions deteriorated by age and long-deferred maintenance. Yet to most citizens, the decay remains largely invisible. Only their tax bills and the headlines about crime or riots suggest that something may be seriously wrong in the city. There are, however, two groups of people that live constantly with the problem of the city: the public officials and the poor, particularly the residents of the racial ghetto. Their relationship is a key factor in the development of conditions underlying civil disorders. Our investigations of the 1967 riot cities establish that virtually every major episode of urban violence in the summer of 1967 was foreshadowed by an accumulation of unresolved grievances by ghetto residents against local authorities, often but not always the police. So high was the resulting underlying tension that routine and random events, tolerated or ignored under most circumstances, such as the raid on the Blind Pig in Detroit and the arrest of the cab driver in Newark, became the triggers of sudden violence. Coinciding with this high level of dissatisfaction, confidence in the willingness and ability of local government to respond to Negro grievances was low. Evidence presented to this commission in hearings, field reports, and research analysis of the 1967 riot cities establishes that a substantial number of Negroes were disturbed and angry about local government's failures to solve their problems. Several developments have converged to produce this volatile situation. First, there is a widening gulf in communications between local government and the residents of the erupting ghettos of the city. As a result, many Negro citizens develop a profound sense of isolation and alienation from the processes and programs of government. This lack of communication exists for all residents in our larger cities. It is, however, far more difficult to overcome for low-income, less educated citizens who are disproportionately supported by and dependent upon programs administered by agencies of local government. Consequently, they are more often subject to real or imagined official misconduct, ranging from abrasive contacts with police officials to arbitrary administrative actions. Further, as a result of the long history of racial discrimination, grievances experienced by Negroes often take on personal and symbolic significance, transcending the immediate consequences of the event. For example, inadequate sanitation services are viewed by many ghetto residents not merely as instances of poor public service, but as manifestations of racial discrimination. This perception reinforces existing feelings of alienation and contributes to a heightened level of frustration and dissatisfaction, not only with the administrators of the sanitation department, but with all the representatives of local government. This is particularly true with respect to the police, who are the only public agents on duty in the ghetto 24 hours a day, and who bear this burden of hostility for the less visible elements of the system. The lack of communication and the absence...
They used the police to manage the ghetto instead of just managing the ghetto from a higher position. Keep them in line.
Yeah, well, the thing is, if you can't, you have to contain them. Okay.
Yeah.
If you can't contain them, because you can't give them what they need. In other words, like I said, that with the people with jobs and money moving out of the area, that and they can't be taxed. Then, and poor people moving in that don't have the jobs or the revenue or the tax base to maintain the areas, what are you going to get? They don't have anything, right? So as the position deteriorates, then you have to bring in more police to control folks. And that becomes the cheapest way.
Mm-hmm.
Absence of regular contacts with ghetto residents prevents city leaders from learning about problems and grievances as they develop. As a result, tensions, which could have been dissipated if responded to promptly, mount unnecessarily, and the potential for explosion grows inevitably. Once disorder erupts, public officials are frequently unable to fashion an effective response. They lack adequate information about the nature of the trouble and its causes, and they lack rapport with local leaders who might be able to influence the community. Second, many city governments are poorly organized to respond effectively to the needs of ghetto residents, even when those needs are made known to appropriate public officials. Most middle-class city dwellers have limited contacts with local government. When contacts do occur, they tend to concern relatively narrow and specific problems. Furthermore, middle-class citizens, although subject to many of the same frustrations and resentments as ghetto residents in dealing with the public bureaucracy, find it relatively easy to locate the appropriate agency for help and redress. If they fail to get satisfaction, they can call on a variety of remedies: assistance of elected representatives, friends in government, a lawyer. In short, the middle-class city dweller has relatively fewer needs for public services and is reasonably well-positioned to move the system to his benefit. On the other hand, the typical ghetto resident has interrelated social and economic problems which require the services of several government and private agencies. At the same time, he may be unable to identify his problems to fit the complicated structure of government. Moreover, he may be unaware of his rights and opportunities under public programs and unable to obtain the necessary guidance from either public or private sources. Current trends in municipal administration have had the effect of reducing the capacity of local government to respond effectively to these needs. The pressures for administrative efficiency and cost cutting have brought about the withdrawal of many operations of city government from direct contact with neighborhood and citizen. Red tape and administrative complexity have filled the vacuum created by the centralization of local government. The introduction of a merit system and a professionalized civil service has made management of the cities more businesslike, but it has also tended to depersonalize and isolate government. The rigid patterns of segregation prevalent within the central city have widened the distance between Negro citizens and City Hall. In most of the riot cities surveyed by the Commission, we found little or no meaningful coordination among city agencies, either in responding to the needs of ghetto residents on an ongoing basis or in planning to head off disturbances. The consequences of this lack of coordination were particularly severe for the police. Despite the fact that they were being called upon increasingly to deal with tensions and citizen complaints often having little, if anything, to do with police services, the police departments of many large cities were isolated from other city agencies, sometimes including the mayor and his staff. In these cities, the police were compelled to deal with ghetto residents angered over dirty streets, dilapidated housing, unfair commercial practices, or inferior schools, grievances which they had neither the responsibility for creating nor the authority to redress. Third, ghetto residents...
Yeah, that's what I was saying. That they let them do it, but that's something that's not their job. That's not the police's job. That's your local government's job to make sure that you have clean streets. You don't have your streets are broken. Your housing is clean, stuff like that.
Yeah, what happens when you don't have the money to actually do that, or the ability to actually coordinate people actually redress their own problems? Then police catch the fallout.
Yeah, they do. But I think in this regard, I think they were left alone because when they came to the white ghettos, they didn't have that problem. It was just the black ones.
Yeah, well, yeah, because even though you had similar problems in the white ghettos, you had more of an ability to actually redress the problems. Cleaning the streets and helping to build the schools, because you caught the urban cities on the upswing instead of the downswing. Because you see, when the money moves back in, especially when they gentrify, all of a sudden that shit changes.
Oh yeah, because money.
Because money. I mean, a lot of this stuff comes down to money. Money organizes people, and we don't have the we don't have the kind of society. The societies, say, like, look at the Asians, right? Even though they might be poor, they could organize each other to actually keep their the streets clean and stuff like that. Even though they don't have money, but the thing is, all money does is buy services, and if the people are organized to actually do their own services and keep their own area up, then that kind of balances things out. But things as far as schools and stuff like that are concerned, okay, that is a problem with the government.
Yeah.
So in other words, what they put more money into police because it's cheaper than trying to redress the other problems. That's in my opinion. All right, go ahead, continue.
All right, no problem.
Believe that they are excluded from the decision-making process which affects their lives and community. This feeling of exclusion, intensified by the bitter legacy of racial discrimination, has engendered a deep-seated hostility toward the institutions of government. It has severely compromised the effectiveness of programs intended to provide improved services to ghetto residents. In part, this is the lesson of Detroit and New Haven, where well-intentioned programs designed to respond to the needs of ghetto residents were not worked out and implemented sufficiently in cooperation with the intended beneficiaries. A report prepared for the Senate Subcommittee on Employment, Manpower, and Poverty, presented just prior to the riot in Detroit, found that area residents complain almost continually that their demands for program changes are not heeded, that they have little voice in what goes on. As much as the area residents are involved, listened to, and even heeded, it becomes fairly clear that the relationship is still one of superordinate-subordinate rather than one of equals. The procedures by which HRD, the Mayor's Committee for Human Resources Development, the Detroit Community Action Agency, operates by and large admit the contributions of area residents only after programs have been written, after policies have already operated for a time or already been formulated, and to a large degree only in formal and infrequent meetings rather than in day-to-day operations. The meaningfulness of resident involvement is reduced by its after-the-fact nature and by relatively limited resources they have at their disposal. Mayor Alfonso J. Cervantes of St. Louis was even more explicit. In testimony before this commission, he stated, "We have found that ghetto neighborhoods cannot be operated on from outside alone. The people within them should have a voice, and our experience has shown that it is often a voice that speaks with good sense, since the practical aspect of the needs of the ghetto people are so much clearer to the people there than they are to anyone else." The political system, traditionally an important vehicle for minorities to participate effectively in decisions affecting the distribution of public resources, has not worked for the Negro as it has for other groups. The reasons are fairly obvious. We have found that the number of Negro officials in elected and appointed positions in the riot cities is minimal in proportion to the Negro population. The alienation of the Negro from the political process has been exacerbated by his racial and economic isolation. Specifically, the needs of ghetto residents for social welfare and other public services have swelled dramatically at a time when increased affluence has diminished the need for such services by the rest of the population.
I was just saying that.
By reducing disproportionately the economic disability of other portions of the population, particularly other ethnic urban minorities, this affluence has left the urban Negro few potential local allies with whom to make common cause for shared objectives. The development of political alliances, essential to effective participation of minority groups in the political process, has been further impaired by the polarization of the races, which on both sides has transformed economic considerations into racial issues. Finally, these developments have coincided with the demise of the historic urban political machines and the growth of the city manager concept of government. While this tendency has produced major benefits in terms of honest and efficient administration, it has eliminated an important political link between city government and low-income residents. These conditions have produced a vast and threatening disparity in perceptions of the intensity and validity of Negro dissatisfaction. Viewed from the perspective of the ghetto resident, city government appears distant and unconcerned, the possibility of effective change remote. As a result, tension rises perceptibly. The explosion comes as the climax to a progression of tension-generating incidents. To the city administration, unaware of this growing tension or unable to respond effectively to it, the outbreak of disorder comes as a shock. No democratic society can long endure the existence within its major urban centers of a substantial number of citizens who feel deeply aggrieved as a group, yet lack confidence in the government to rectify perceived injustice and in their ability to bring about needed change. We are aware that reforms in existing instruments of local government and the relationship to the ghetto population will mean little unless joined with sincere and comprehensive response to the severe social and economic needs of ghetto residents. Elsewhere in this report, we make specific recommendations with respect to employment, education, welfare, and housing, which we hope will meet some of these needs. We believe, however, that there are measures which can and should be taken now, that they can be put to work without great cost and without delay, that they can be built upon in the future, and that they will effectively reduce the level of grievance and tension, as well as improve the responsiveness of local government to the needs of ghetto residents. Basic strategy and goals. To meet the needs identified above, we recommend pursuit of a comprehensive strategy which would accomplish the following goals: effective communication between ghetto residents and local government, improved ability of local government to respond to the needs and problems of ghetto residents, expanded opportunities for citizen leadership to participate in shaping decisions and policies which affect their community, increased accountability of public officials. We recognize that not all the programs proposed below to implement the foregoing goals can be instituted with the immediacy required by the problem. Because the need for action at the local level, where government impinges directly upon the ghetto resident, is particularly urgent, we propose that our suggested programs be implemented in 2 phases. It is vital, however, that the first phase programs not be regarded or perceived as short-term and anti-riot efforts calculated to cool already inflamed situations. These programs will have little chance of succeeding unless they are part of a long-range commitment to action designed to eliminate the fundamental sources of grievance and tension. Programs. First phase actions. Establishment of neighborhood action task forces. To open channels of communication between government and ghetto residents, improve the capacity of the city administration to respond effectively to community needs, and provide opportunity for meaningful citizen participation in decision-making, we recommend establishment of joint government community neighborhood action task forces covering each neighborhood within the city which has a high proportion of low-income minority citizens. While the exact form of these groups will depend upon the size and needs of each municipality, the following basic features should be incorporated. Composition. Each task force should include a key official in the mayor's office with direct and immediate access to the mayor, ranking city officials from the operating agencies servicing the ghetto community, Elected leaders, representatives from the local business, labor, professional, and church communities, and neighborhood leaders, including representatives of community organizations of all orientations, as well as youth leaders. Each task force would be headed by the mayor's representative. In the larger cities, each of these chairmen would sit as a member of a citywide task force. Functions. The Neighborhood Action Task Forces should meet on a regular basis at a location accessible to ghetto residents. These meetings will afford an opportunity for ghetto leaders to communicate directly with the municipal administrators for their area to discuss problems and programs which affect the community. In effect, this device furnishes an interagency coordinating mechanism on the one hand and a community cabinet on the other. Ghetto residents should be able to rely on the capacity of the task force to cut through the maze of red tape and to overcome bureaucratic barriers in order to make things: collection of garbage, removal of abandoned cars, installation of lights in the park, establishment of play streets, happen. To accomplish this purpose, the participating city officials should have operational decision-making authority. Lower-level staff or public relations personnel will be unable to provide the confrontation and interaction with the community representatives which is essential to the effective functioning of the task force. Moreover, there is grave danger that opening channels of communication without providing opportunities for obtaining relief will further estrange ghetto residents. If this is not to happen, the task force should have a meaningful and realistic capacity for securing redress of grievances. For the same reason, it is essential that the task force have the full and energetic support of the mayor and the city council.
That reminds me of a story.
Mm-hmm.
When I was working at Pizza Hut, and I delivered a pizza to like this Mexican neighborhood, and I had to go inside this building, and basically they were having like a neighborhood meeting in there where they had like the person who was the head and stuff like that. And I was just looking around, it's like, where am I at? He's like, oh, this is a neighborhood meeting. And this is pretty much what it's pretty much talking about. You should have leaders in your neighborhood where you guys can talk about your problems, and he'll bring it up with the next person that's higher than him. So that way they can bring it up to the local government, so that way something can happen.
Yeah, you have a funnel for grievances, and you collect them all and see what the main points are, and actually give it to the mayor to be addressed, where the money is.
Yeah,
where it can be coordinated. Yep.
So. And they had that with neighborhood watches, programs,
coordinating with the police,
coordinating with the police, stuff like that. So this is where all this stuff was coming from.
Yeah, you can see, you can actually see all the stuff that's been implemented over the past 40 years or so, coming directly from the suggestions in this document. You can actually see it. You can actually all the programs that we see. You can actually see where the impetus actually came from. This is why I say the Kerner Commission is probably one of the most unrecognized documents, probably in history. Nobody actually looks at it.
No,
even though it's really important.
And that's why I decided to do this, because I know it was working.
Yeah, it was probably a learning experience for you, but also everybody else.
Yeah. Right, let's go to the next one.
Potential for responding effectively to community needs is not limited to available public resources. Acting through business, labor, and church members, and local urban coalitions which have already been formed, the task force will have a capacity to involve the resources of the private sector in meeting needs within the ghetto. Possibilities range from support of special summer youth programs, weekend trips, recreation events, camping programs, to provision of cultural and employment opportunities on a year-round basis. The Neighborhood Action Task Force can play a significant role with respect to youth activities. One approach, which has worked in several cities, involves the establishment of youth councils to employ young street leaders, regardless of previous police records, to develop community programs for other alienated youth. These activities might include organizing and operating libraries, neighborhood cleanup campaigns, police community dialogues, and sports competitions in their own neighborhoods. Finally, such an organization can make a major contribution to the prevention of civil disorders. If the task force has been successful in achieving the objectives stressed above, its members will have gained the confidence of a wide spectrum of ghetto residents. This will enable them to identify potentially explosive conditions and, working with police, to defuse them. Similarly, the task force could have considerable effectiveness in handling threatening incidents identified by the police. To accomplish this objective, an early warning system could be instituted during the critical summer months. Operating on a 24-hour basis, such a system should have the capacity to receive and evaluate police reports of potentially serious incidents and to initiate an appropriate non-police response, utilizing community contacts and task force personnel. Any such operation must have the cooperation of the police, who will be in control of the overall disorder response. To avoid confusion and duplication of effort, The task force should have responsibility for coordinating the efforts of all agencies other than police and fire once a disturbance has occurred. An example will serve to illustrate how the system might operate. Following the slaying last summer of a Negro teenager by a Negro detective in the Bedford-Stuyvesant section of Brooklyn, New York, a rumor that the youth had been shot by a white policeman and that the police were trying to suppress this information began to circulate through an already tense neighborhood. The situation became threatening. Yet within an hour, 3 white members of the mayor's summer task force group were able to convince a group of black militants that the police version was true. Walking the streets that night and the next 2 evenings, they worked to dispel the rumor and to restore community stability. In the larger cities, the citywide task force could have responsibility for coordinating the programs of various municipal agencies, concentrating their impact on poverty areas, and planning for the more effective implementation of existing public efforts. The Commission believes that the task force approach can do precisely what other forms of neighborhood organizations have not been able to do. It can connect the real needs and priorities of low-income residents with the energies and resources of both city government and the private sector. It can substantially improve the quality and timeliness of city services to these areas. It will fail unless all of the groups involved are prepared to deal fairly and openly with the problems of the community. But if it succeeds, it will not only produce improved services, it will go far to generate a new sense of community. End of section 33. Section 34 of the Kerner Commission Report. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Eric Evans, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Report of the National Advisory Commission on Civil Disorders. Kerner Commission Report. Chapter 10, The Community Response, Part 2. Establishment of effective grievance response mechanisms. Effective implementation of the Neighborhood Action Task Forces will depend upon the continuing commitment of the city administration to their success. To ensure attention to many of the sources of tension identified above, we recommend that formal mechanisms for the processing of grievances, many of which will relate to the performance of the city government, be established independent of the local administration. We are convinced, on the record before this commission, that the frustration reflected in the recent disorders results, in part at least, from the lack of accessible and visible means of establishing the merits of grievances against the agencies of local and state government, including but not limited to the police. Cities and states throughout the country now have under consideration various forms of grievance response devices. While we are not prepared to specify the form which such a mechanism should take in any particular community, there are certain criteria which should be met. These include independence. This can be achieved by long-term appointment of the administrator, subject to city council removal. The grievance agency should be separate from operating municipal agencies. Adequate staff and funding. Exact costs will vary depending on the size and needs of the city's population. It is most important that the agency have adequate funds and staff to discharge its responsibilities. Comprehensive coverage of grievances against public agencies and authorities. General jurisdiction will facilitate access by grievance. Moreover, unlike specialized complaint agencies, such as civilian review boards, all agencies would be brought equally under public scrutiny. This should facilitate its acceptance by public officials. Power to receive complaints, hold hearings, subpoena witnesses, make public recommendations for remedial action to local authorities, and, in cases involving violation of law, bring suit. These powers are the minimum necessary for the effective operation of the grievance mechanism. As we envision it, the agency's principal power derives from its authority to investigate and make public findings and recommendations. It should, of course, have a conciliation process whereby complaints could be resolved without full investigation and processing. Accessibility.
Paid them off.
In large cities, neighborhood offices in ghetto areas.
I mean, it's true.
Local resident aides receive complaints. It should be possible to file a grievance orally or in writing. If forms are used, they should be easily understood and widely available. Participation in grievance process. Grievance should be given full opportunity to take part in all proceedings and to be represented by counsel. They should receive prompt advice of action taken. Results of investigations should be made public. Expanded legal services. Among the most intense grievances underlying the riots of the summer of 1967 were those which derived from conflicts between ghetto residents and private parties, principally white landlords and merchants. Though the legal obstacles are considerable, resourceful and imaginative use of available legal processes could contribute significantly to the alleviation of resulting tensions. Through the adversary process, which is at the heart of our judicial system, litigants are afforded a meaningful opportunity to influence events which affect them and their community. However, effective utilization of the courts requires legal assistance, a resource seldom available to the poor. Litigation is not the only need which ghetto residents have for legal service. Participation in the grievance procedures suggested above may well require legal assistance. More importantly, ghetto residents have need of effective advocacy of their interests and concerns in a variety of other contexts, from representation before welfare agencies and other institutions of government to advocacy before planning boards and commissions concerned with the formulation of development plans. Again, professional representation can provide substantial benefits in terms of overcoming the ghetto resident's alienation from the institutions of government by implicating him in its processes. Although lawyers function in precisely this fashion for the middle-class clients, they are too often not available to the impoverished ghetto resident.
Basically, trying to make people feel more involved in the process.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it cuts down the anger, because if people don't think they're getting a fair shot, then resentment rises up, and eventually you get enough of them, then you get get what you saw, which is a riot. And we know how racist this country is, and the thing is that inequity causes an imbalance, and imbalance causes what you see. Just like in any place, like you look at the shanty towns or the favelas or something like that.
Yeah,
it's a human thing.
yeah, it's more intensified, especially if the person does not look nothing like you.
Yeah.
Yeah, because now
or even if they did a class thing, like the peasants, versus the lords.
Mm-hmm. Let's go to the next one.
The Legal Services Program, administered by the Office of Economic Opportunity, has made a good beginning in providing legal assistance to the poor.
Mm-hmm.
Its present level of effort should be substantially expanded through increased private and public funding. In addition, the participation of law schools should be increased through development of programs whereby advanced students can provide legal assistance as a regular part of their professional training.
Yeah. Remember all the free legal assistance?
Major responsibility for leadership and support.
Mm-hmm.
Assistance for mayors and city councils.
Did you want to talk about it?
In the chapters that follow.
No. Just you're mentioning that a lot of these programs we see came out of this.
Okay.
Capacity of the federal government to affect local problems depends to a great extent on the capacity of city government to respond competently to federal program initiatives. In the face of the bewildering proliferation of both community demands and local, state, and federal programs, mayors and city councils need to create new mechanisms to aid in decision-making, program planning, and coordination. At this time, however, no assistance is available to develop these new and critically necessary institutional capabilities or to support the required research, consultants, staff, or other vital components of administrative or legislative competence. The Commission recommends, therefore, that both the state and federal governments provide financial assistance to cities for these purposes as a regular part of all urban program funding. Hearings on ghetto problems and enactment of appropriate local legislation. Many of the grievances identified in our study of the conditions underlying civil disorders can be redressed only through legislative action. Accordingly, we recommend that the legislative body of each city with a substantial minority population hold, as soon as possible, a series of hearings on ghetto problems. In large cities, these hearings could well be held in the ghetto itself to facilitate full citizen participation. In addition to establishing a foundation for needed legislative measures, these hearings would constitute a visible demonstration of governmental concern for the problems of ghetto residents. They would also provide a most useful means of bridging the communications gap, contributing to an improved understanding in the white community about the conditions of ghetto life. Expanded employment by city government of ghetto residents. We strongly recommend that local government undertake a concerted effort to provide substantial employment opportunities for ghetto residents. Local governments now employ 6.4 million people full-time, most of whom live in urban areas. They comprise one of the fastest growing segments of the economy. This offers an opportunity of the greatest significance for local government to respond to one of the most critical needs of ghetto residents and, at the same time, to decrease the distance between City Hall and the ghetto by deliberate employment, training, and upgrading of Negroes. To accomplish this goal, we recommend that municipal authorities review applicable civil service policies and job standards and take prompt action to remove arbitrary barriers to employment of ghetto residents. Re-evaluation is particularly necessary with respect to requirements relating to employment qualification tests and police records.
Mm-hmm.
Leadership by city government in this vital area is of urgent priority, not only because of the important public employment potential, but also to stimulate private employers to take similar action.
Mm-hmm.
Second phase actions. Establishment of neighborhood city halls. The Neighborhood Action Task Force concept provides a basis on which lasting structures can be erected. The principal change required in order to transform the official component of the task force into a permanent instrument of local government involves the establishment of offices in the neighborhoods served. Depending on the size and composition of the neighborhood, the permanent staff should include an assistant mayor, representatives of the municipal agencies, the city councilman staff and other institutions and groups included in the task force. This facility would function, in effect, as a neighborhood city hall.
Yep.
The neighborhood city hall would accomplish several interrelated objectives. It would contribute to the improvement of public services by providing an effective channel for low-income citizens to communicate their needs and problems to the appropriate public officials, and by increasing the ability of local government to respond in a coordinated and timely fashion. It would serve as the eyes and ears of the mayor and council and furnish an informal forum for complaints and grievances. It would make information about government programs and services available to ghetto residents, enabling them to make more effective use of such programs and services while making clear the limitations on the availability of all such programs and services. It would expand opportunities for meaningful community access to and involvement in the planning and implementation of policy affecting the neighborhood. Most important, the neighborhood city hall, building on the task force approach, affords a significant opportunity to accomplish the democratic goal of making government closer and more accountable to the citizen.
You know what they call them?
What's that?
Remember the Community Resource Center? I don't know. That's what they call them here. In other words, a local resource center where you know where programs is. You can get in contact with legal services and all that kind of stuff. They call them community resource centers. What do they call them where you guys are at?
I think they call them resource centers too.
Yeah, those are this is what he's talking about, the community city hall. Because City Hall, if you go down to City Hall, it's basically the same thing, but scaled up. So Community Resource Center is what they're describing. So a lot of this stuff that they suggested, you can actually see a lot of stuff that came out of this document has actually been implemented.
Yeah, it's like looking back in time because they didn't have none of this stuff back then.
Because they didn't have this stuff back then, so we can actually see where it came from.
That's why it's always good to look at where you came from, so you know where you're going.
Yeah. Somebody, even Mitch Meacher says, I remember community resource centers. Those are the local community city halls that they're talking about. Go ahead.
Development of multi-service centers. Frequently, services vital to the ghetto resident, job placement and location, healthcare, legal assistance, are inaccessible because they are located at a considerable distance from the ghetto, a distance often made greater by the lack of efficient public transportation. This problem is compounded by the fact that many key service institutions are fragmented, requiring those seeking assistance to pursue it at various locations scattered throughout a large urban area. To meet this need, the Office of Economic Opportunity has funded over 700 neighborhood centers in ghetto areas throughout the country since 1961. Many of these have been small storefront operations housing OEO-funded services. Some, as in Detroit, have had a fairly wide range of services and have served a large number of families. The principal problem has been that most centers have not been comprehensive enough. They rarely include traditional city and state agency services. Many relevant federal programs are seldom located in the same center. Manpower and education programs from HEW in the Labor Department, for example, have been housed in separate centers without adequate consolidation or coordination, either geographically or programmatically.
Yeah,
the resulting proliferation
we call that manpower over here.
On the Department of Housing and Urban Development to establish comprehensive one-stop service centers. The experience thus far indicates the need for more effective coordination of federal programs at the national and regional levels. Legislation may be required to simplify grant procedures and assure such coordination. Each center should have enough neighborhood workers to reach out into the homes of needy people who are not able to seek help. To assure that the service centers are relevant to the needs and styles of the neighborhood, ghetto residents should be trained and employed at all levels. This purpose can well be served through establishment and involvement of community service center councils to establish overall policy. We recommend increased federal funding for comprehensive centers and implementation of the policy guidelines proposed above. Improved political representation.
Yeah, like even at my job, like I had to go, even though I pretty much had the job, their policy was I had to go through manpower to be in a temporary agency to work for like I think 3 months, and then I got hired on with the company.
Yeah, because they because it's a federal program, they get credit for that. Tax credits and funds and stuff like that. So, yeah, it's better for them to funnel you through manpower or a federal program because it benefits them.
Yeah, they get the breaks.
They get the tax breaks. They get funding, and then basically they train you for free because you're supervisors. When you bring on a new employee, it takes a good 6 months to train an employee to actually really do the job properly.
Because there's
So,
all kind of nuances and situations that need to come up, and it does take about a good minute for them to go through at least about 80% of that, to where if something does come up that they don't know about, they have a pretty good idea about how to handle it.
How to handle it, yeah.
So,
It takes about a good 6 months for an employee to even become sufficiently independent. It actually takes about, they said, a good 2 to 3 years to actually get a good employee to where they're completely independent. You know, so 90 days, just like a 90 days, what do they call it? What do they call that for the first 90 days? Probation.
yeah, probation period.
Yeah, so basically,
See how you work out.
See how you work out. So basically, the 90-day training program and then another 90-day probation. That's the first 6 months. So by the time they get you through probation, you're pretty much a decent. They know whether you're going to be a decent employee or not. So.
Yeah, they don't even worry about me anymore. They just leave me alone.
Oh well, yeah. Now, well, you've been there how many years?
10.
10. Yeah.
Well, no, hold on. No, about by 12. Actually.
Yes, yeah. They would. Yeah, if you left, that would hurt them. You could probably irreplaceable.
Pretty much. What he told, because my boss came to my warehouse so I can get my evaluation and stuff, and he just pretty much told me that out of all the people that work in the warehouses, I'm the one that has the least amount of stales or like cuts and ads. So pretty much I'm doing the best out of everybody in the warehouses.
Yeah, time to ask for a raise.
I already got my raise.
Oh, yeah, it's your raise? Okay, good.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, I gotta get a raise every year.
Okay. They give you a bonus?
I get that. How many weeks? Because February, I used to get that the first week of March.
Okay, they should give you a pretty substantial bonus.
Yeah, the thing. Last year I got one full paycheck extra.
Okay.
So who knows what I'm gonna get this year?
Yeah, you probably save them more money than you cost.
Yeah, like I said, they don't call me for nothing. They're just like, yeah, he's gonna come in. There was even one time where I had to go to someone else's warehouse to get them in order because they came in super late and they couldn't do their job. And it's like, I know it's late. I know you just got off work, but could you go help them? I'm like, am I gonna get paid for it? Yes. It's like, okay, as long as I get paid for it.
We ain't doing this for free.
Hell no. I'm on the clock.
Was it grass ass or gas, huh?
Exactly. All right, let's go to the next one.
It is beyond the scope of this report to consider in detail the many problems presented by the existing distribution of political power within city governments. But it is plain that the Negro ghetto resident feels deeply that he is not represented fairly and adequately under the arrangements which prevail in many cities. This condition strikes at major democratic values. To meet this problem, city government and the majority community should revitalize the political system to encourage fuller participation by all segments of the community. Whether this requires adoption of any one system of representation, we are not prepared to say. But it is clear that at-large representation, currently the practice in many American cities, does not give members of the minority community a feeling of involvement or stake in city government. Further, this form of representation dilutes the normal political impact of pressures generated by a particular neighborhood or district. Negro representation and participation in the formal structure of government can also be furthered by a concerted effort to appoint Negroes to significant policy positions in city government. More effective community participation. One of the most difficult and controversial problems we have encountered relates to ghetto demands for self-determination or community control. To a limited extent, this concept was made a matter of national policy in the Economic Opportunity Act of 1964, which specified that community action programs should be developed, conducted, and administered with maximum feasible participation of the residents of the areas and members of the groups served. In the 3 years since the beginning of the War on Poverty, the effort to put maximum feasible participation into effect has met with both success and failure. One measure of its success can be seen in the extent to which the demand for participation, even control, over a variety of programs affecting the ghetto has spilled over into the most traditional areas, such as public school administration. But the demands made often seem intransigent and the time required for negotiation with residents extravagant. The pulling and hauling of different factions competing for control within the ghetto community sometimes makes it difficult to mount any program.
True.
Moreover, it is often easier to organize groups to oppose, complain.
You see that on YouTube.
Say what?
You see that? That's true. See that on YouTube, the push and pull of control.
Yeah, that's true. Or um, reparations. So that
Oh
taught the ADOS
Lord.
community.
Well, yeah. Oh man, I knew that would implode. Yeah. The Highlander syndrome.
There can be only one.
Hmm.
Than to develop and run programs. Yet the demand for a community voice represents a marked and desirable gain over the apathy that existed before. Despite its problems, we believe that meaningful community participation and a substantial measure of involvement in program development is an essential strategy for city government. The democratic values which it advances, providing a stake in the social system, improving the accountability of public officials, as well as the pragmatic benefits which it provides, far outweigh these costs. The essential question which city leadership must face is the ultimate goal of community participation. In this sense, community involvement is directly related to the strategy of decentralization, for with the support of the city, neighborhood groups may become an effective force for carrying on a variety of functions, such as physical renewal and development, which can be highly disruptive when imposed by outside authority. If these principles are accomplished, then the choice of mechanisms will depend upon the needs of the particular community and the structure of the local government. We have described earlier in this section opportunities for meaningful community participation in the processes of government. Additional and diverse instrumentalities, such as community neighborhood school boards, community planning boards, tenants' councils, youth councils, advisory committees, and consumer trade organizations, offer further ways of providing institutional channels for effective citizen participation in public decision making. The crucial issue, however, is whether city government is willing to legitimize these organizations by dealing with them on a regular basis with respect to matters within their competence. We believe that such an approach offers substantial promise of improving the relationship between local government and ghetto residents. The involvement of the ghetto community in the planning and operation of development programs need not be confined to the public arena. There is great potential in private community development corporations which can emerge from a combined public-private sponsorship and perform mixed functions for the community, including sponsorship of locally owned businesses. The most promising approach is the Neighborhood Membership Corporation, the first of which was established in Columbus, Ohio in 1965, the East Central Citizens Organization, ECCO, under an OEO grant. Functioning as a town meeting, its members include all of the residents of a defined ghetto neighborhood, 8,150 people. Its activities encompass daycare centers, credit unions, legal and medical services, newspapers, restaurants, and business enterprises. Both money and manpower will be needed from government, foundations, and private business to create and assist these corporations and other new community institutions. Technical and professional support will be required. The opportunity that they offer to develop stable community leadership structures and constructive involvement should not be allowed to fail for lack of such support. Conclusion. Finally, there remains the issue of leadership. Now, as never before, the American city has need for the personal qualities of strong democratic leadership. Given the difficulties and delays involved in administrative reorganization or institutional change, the best hope for the city in the short run lies in this powerful instrument. In most cities, the mayor will have the prime responsibility. It is in large part his role now to create a sense of commitment and concern for the problems of the ghetto community and to set the tone for the entire relationship between the institutions of city government and all the citizenry. Part of the task is to interpret the problems of the ghetto community to the citizenry at large and to generate channels of communication between Negro and white leadership outside of government. Only if all the institutions of the community, those outside of government as well as those inside the structure, are implicated in the problems of the ghetto, can the alienation and distrust of disadvantaged citizens be overcome. This is now the decisive role for the urban mayor. As leader and mediator, he must involve all those groups, employers, news media, unions, financial institutions, and others, which only together can bridge the chasm now separating the racial ghetto from the community. His goal, in effect, must be to develop a new working concept of democracy within the city. In this effort, state government has a vital role to play. It must equip city leadership with the jurisdictional tools to deal with its problems. It must provide a fuller measure of financial and other resources to urban areas. Most importantly, state leadership is in a unique position to focus the interests and growing resources, political as well as financial, of the suburbs on the physical, social, and cultural environment of the central cities. The crisis confronting city government today cannot be met without regional cooperation. This cooperation can take many forms: metropolitan government, regional planning, joint endeavors. It must be a principal goal, perhaps the overriding concern of leadership at the state level, to fashion a lasting and mutually productive relationship between city and suburban areas.
And that is it for the conclusion.
Yeah, you can almost see almost looks like a document they would write today as far as action centers, community centers, resource centers, what
Yeah.
what resource they're going to provide, what they call the OEO grants, which became affirmative action grants.
Yeah.
Um, daycare, all the stuff that we have now that we take for granted now. That wasn't available. Back then.
Yeah. Making
This
sure
is
you.
what they were talking about.
Yeah.
Go
Making
ahead.
sure you get the child tax credits to the people when they go to the resource centers, and
Mm-hmm.
so they can go
Mm-hmm.
to get child care at a discounted
Mm-hmm.
rate,
Mm-hmm.
so they can go to work, stuff like that.
Yeah.
That you can get. That's what all the community centers are there for, to help you get the stuff you need, so you
Mm-hmm.
can go out to your day and
Yeah.
make sure your grievances are going to be heard when you go to the community watches. So
Yep. Yep.
I mean, it was an interesting chapter. It's a little dry, but it's interesting. To say the
No,
least.
it's dry, but it's informative because they're laying. Because we went through the problems that the community has, especially the ghetto urban communities,
Yeah.
and these are the remedies. And the thing is, it's interesting to see how many of the remedies that they propose actually got implemented.
Mm-hmm.
That's the most interesting thing. It's not that what they were suggesting, because we're looking back in history, right? These are the things that they were suggesting. The thing is, what actually got implemented
What got through?
over the next 50 years.
Yeah. So.
And even you went back to the program that you went through, right, to get a job, right? Manpower. How old is that? You see how old that program actually is.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So, I know chapter 11 is police and community. I wanted to read it, see if it's important to go through. If it is important to go through, I would like to get Charles and you up here.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to listen to it and read it and see if it is.
Well, you can go through it. It does, hell, it's YouTube, man. We got time.
Yeah, I know. So Charles, I don't know if Charles is going to read it or not, but Charles, if you can come up, because I know you probably got more knowledge about police policy and stuff like this.
You want to do it today?
No, I gotta go to work.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Yeah.
No, I'm just saying probably next Tuesday.
Yeah.
If Charles is still here, I know he said woo in the chat.
Yeah. He's listening.
Yeah, I'll get with him later and tell him.
Oh, we got the whole. Well, you can talk to him all weekend.
Yeah, I know.
Charles is everywhere. I said, this Negro work?
I know, really. Don't you got a life?
Don't you have a life? Don't you have a job?
But yeah, this police and community, I was looking at it and I was like, this might be interesting to get Charles' take on, because it's about the patrol practices and police conduct. And so some of the stuff that he learned, he can actually talk about because he's been a cop. So to see that the differences in practices from back then to now will be interesting to talk about, especially with a police officer up here.
Oh, so email me the link. Oh, we're not going to do it today, Charles.
Yeah, we're not going to do it today, Charles. We'll do it next Tuesday. Negro. Get your Madden game up. Then we
Get your thumbs ready.
I know, right? But anything else, BGS?
No, it's just this is, like I said, this is a hidden gem. They always talk about the Monahan report, which is small compared to this one. The Monahan report was only like maybe 60 pages, 68 pages, I think. This is like, if they put it in, because I actually have the book, and this thing is like, like almost 800 pages
that little
worth.
book, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I got that too.
Yeah, like 800 pages worth of stuff. So
Thick, nubby little thing.
Yeah, with tiny ass little print too.
They did it on purpose.
Yeah, well they did. Well, they tried to save paper, back then. And so this is much more extensive than the Monahan reports, because they always talk about that the Monahan report was never was debunked, right? Because they always point to this because it was never completely studied. The Monahan report was just an overview. This is an actual study, by like 1,500 people, and really extensive, over like 6 months, with on multiple levels, and you can actually see exactly how extensive this actually is. So they're telling you, they're actually telling you what they found, what was reported, because they talked to everybody. So this is literally a history of civil rights, in the 60s.
Mm-hmm. Oh, here he go. It's about. I don't need to get ready for Man and Bum. What do you want, the PDF, Charles, or what? So you can read it? Is that what you're talking about? Because I could send you the PDF, ain't no problem. Or you can download it yourself. Because it's free. That's what I did.
It looks that I have a life somewhat.
Yeah, I know. This guy.
Yeah, yep.
But yeah.
Mongo has a life. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, this is a good report though. This is really
Yeah.
is.
It's extensive, but nobody talks about. I think because it is so dense, nobody talks about it.
Yeah, because
Because
it's hard to summarize it everything they talk about. Well, that you can summarize it, but it goes into detail, and all these details are large. There's a lot of details into this report, which is good. It really is.
It is. It really is a detailed report. Because when I ask academics about it, man, they mention all kind of books, but they never mention this.
Oh, really?
Never mention the Kerner Commission. Yeah, they very few have read the Monahan report, and they never mention the Kerner Commission report ever. Because it took me a long time to even hear about it. Because I just heard about it maybe about 6-7 years ago. Had never heard of it, and then they mentioned it. I said, "What is the Kerner Commission?" And then I started reading about it. Oh, okay. Nobody talks about this.
Well, I'm like I said, I told you, I've heard of this before the Monahan report.
Oh, did you hear the Kerner Commission before?
Yeah, I heard it back in 2009.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I knew about it, but I just never really went through it like that. Because I saw that book back then, and that's not looked at. I was like, okay, I need to get that book. And when I saw it on Amazon, I was like, hell yeah, I need to buy this. Because I know it was rare. The book was rare.
Yeah.
And I guess they must have reprinted it or something. Because when I was looking at it, it was like 60, 70, 80 bucks, something like that.
Oh yeah, the original. Yeah, it was really expensive.
Yeah, they came out like in the 80s. But this one, I think I got it for like 20.
Yeah. So, I think mine was less than that because it was somebody had an old paperback.
Yeah.
I think I paid like $7 for it.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I was glad I got it. And it was vacuum sealed. I don't know who had it, but it was vacuum sealed.
Oh, okay. Oh, you got it in pristine condition. Okay.
Yeah, pristine condition.
Oh no, mine's at pages damn near falling out. Oh man.
But yeah, good section. Yeah, I'll send you the PDF, Charles. Ain't no problem. It's was it section 10?
Section what for him? Section I think it's 11.
Section 11. Oh, let's go back.
Yeah, we did 9 and 10.
Yeah. It should be 11. Let's go back over here.
Yeah, I think that's what.
Chapter.
Yeah, I think this is community policing.
Yeah, policing the community.
Yeah. So a lot of your neighborhood watch, what is it? Citizen review boards, all that kind of stuff came out of this.
It's the riot report, Meech. I'll show a picture of the book. It's on Amazon. Let me go use Edge. Okay. Real quick, 'cause that don't have my information up there.
Yeah. Google Chrome needs to get its act together.
Well, you can now. I don't know if you saw that they updated Google Chrome now, so you can actually have multiple profiles now.
Oh, okay.
Right report, commission report. I don't think it's here anymore.
What's that?
Oh, it's $50 now. 6. So I got it a good deal.
It depends if you go to the independent bookseller.
That's the book right there. It's $50 now, but like I said, if you want to get the book, you can get it.
I think the because I actually PDF'd the copied the book, and the language is a little bit different. They changed it a little bit, but it's it's pretty consistent, but there's slight variations. A little bit more in the book than there is in this PDF copy.
Oh yeah.
Because sometimes because as you're going along, I'm actually reading from my copy of the book from my photocopy section of the book. So it's close, but pretty close, but there's slight variations in it.
So they pretty much changed some stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's why I always try to get books. I mean, I know PDFs and all, but you can change stuff and then re-upload it. So that's why you always gotta get the books if you can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, this is the book. Right now on Amazon is paperback is $50. 6 used for $19.99, 1 new for $90. Damn, and 1 collectible for $60.
Yeah.
Okay.
It must be something, man, because there's another one, mass paperback for $17. I see it for $17. I'll put it in 5 U's for 5 U's for 7. I got one for 17. I'll put it in.
I think I see one.
Yeah.
Yeah, use 17.
Yeah.
Damn, a hardcover of this for 100.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, that's rare.
Oh wow! So that's what it looks like hardcover. Okay.
Printed by the New York Times. Interesting.
Yeah, I wonder what's changed about that. Some of these things be like, yeah, we're gonna take that out. We don't need that. But yeah, very good document. Very good document. I'm only gonna do a couple more of these because, like I said, it's a long document. So
it is.
I ain't gonna go through the whole entire book.
Yeah, this stuff they don't teach you even in college.
No, they don't. Not at all. But all right, so we've got an hour and 22-minute mark. Anything else, BGS, before we head on out?
No, not really. I think we touched on quite a bit. I would behoove people to actually go back and read it for themselves, because it's like interesting tidbits that pop up, like what happened to black businesses, like like the previous section actually gave you an idea what happened to black businesses back in back in the 50s and 60s, they call us Negroes moved from rural areas to urban areas, and they had to face competition with white merchant immigrants or white immigrant owners that actually had the stores all locked up.
Yeah, because they already were in those centers, and then they already was at the third generation where they were actually moving out of poverty and owning the stores around.
Yeah, you see that a lot with even with the Asian immigrants, right? They own the stores in the neighborhood, but where do they live? They don't live in the neighborhood.
No, they don't.
So, yeah, but they still do busy. That's the thing. If you notice, man, that even in the suburbs, right, their jobs are in the cities. Okay, in the urban centers. Okay, okay. The jobs are not where they are in their neighborhoods. The jobs are in your neighborhood. But the thing is, their taxes that they pay to actually keep the city going are not paid in the city. It's paid in the suburbs. So basically, they come in, they use the resources that are in the city, and then they leave.
Yeah.
And then
little taxes too, because the tax base in that area.
Tax base. So the trash and the roads and all that kind of stuff. So basically, who actually suffers? Because where does money have to go? It has to keep. It goes into the productive part of the city, which is the business district, and then so the outlying areas start to wilt. And that's what happens. That's what they were talking about. That's what causes it, because all the money gets sucked out. But they still have to use the city.
That is true. That's why
Mm.
what they say, the dollar doesn't circulate as much as it does in the black community because it
Yeah,
gets siphoned out.
it gets siphoned out. Yeah.
That is true.
Hmm.
Anyway, guys, I am about to get out of here because I gotta make some videos for my geek channel before I go to work.
All right, sir. All
Uh,
right, we got it in. So
yes, sir. Like, share, subscribe.
subscribe and share it with people that they have no clue about what this is, because Archie doing a yeoman's job of actually presenting this stuff, because even academics like Dr. Dunbar, he's got a PhD, he has no clue about the Kerner Commission. None. It was never taught to him in school. And so you have a lot of people with PhDs that have no clue. Even like Dr. Johnson, he has a PhD in Africana Studies. He's never really read the Kerner Commission because it was never taught to him. So this is almost like a college course.
Mm-hmm.
And also Art's doing yeoman's job. So turn people onto his channel, subscribe to him. Um, Cash apps, super chats, whatever you can do, man, to keep this this kind of information going, because I can't do it by myself. So that's how I have help like Art and Charles and other people and Dr. Johnson, because one person like me can't do it by myself. So you need other people, because you're not going to get this in school. You're not going to see this on CNN or MSNBC or wherever you watch. You're not going to see this. Okay, so this is actual history, actual foundational history that will actually show you where these programs come from. So when you bring stuff up about a community center or a manpower center or whatever, you can actually go back in history to the Kerner Commission and actually show where these programs come from and actually have a case about why things should be implemented, because the work's already been done. Work's already been done. But anyway, man, go ahead and get out of here, man, because I know you got other stuff to do, and I need to go check on my grandson and keep him out of trouble.
Yep, that is true. But with that, guys, I am out. I will catch you guys on the next time, and I will be doing my quote unquote Pookie and Ray Ray versus Educated Lane debate on Saturday.
Have you seen the last episode of Boba Fett?
No, I have not seen the last episode.
Have you watched the series?
Nah, because how Artisan was speaking of it, he was like,
They kind of Disneyfied it, but look at the last two episodes of Boba Fett, especially with the Mandalorian. I say the last three with the Mandalorian and Grogu,
okay.
because they kind of brought the Boba Fett and the Mandalorian together.
So it got better.
I don't know if it's better or different. No, I don't think Boba Fett actually got fleshed out. I think they're trying to make Boba Fett more like the Game of Thrones, and I don't know if that works with Star Wars or Disney. Yeah.
No, it don't.
Okay.
That's why I didn't like it. I was just like, that's. And then they took his helmet off. I'm just like, come on, the Mandalorians never take their helmet off.
Well, he did, because we know what he looked like. We know what he looks like from the episode 2, Attack of the Clones.
Yeah, but
you sound like Dr. Johnson. You should know what he looks like.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right. That's for the Geek Channel. We have to discuss it.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway,
all right, y'all.
Later.
Peace.